Meanwhile, there are new questions this morning about what Jared Kushner left off his security clearance form, particularly following the revelation of that meeting with a Russian attorney. Now, the New York Times reports Kushner has supplemented the list of foreign contacts 3 times, adding more than 100 names. Based off of the reporting of the New York Times and Yahoo News, the timeline goes like this. On January 18th, 2 days before the inauguration, Kushner filed the form, but an assistant accidentally hit send too quickly. And reports say he immediately told the FBI he would amend it. But on April 6th, the New York Times reported that he had not listed any foreign contacts. On May 11th, Kushner filed his revised form, which the FBI interviewed him about in mid-May. According to Yahoo, the Russia meeting emails were discovered in June, and Kushner filed a revised form on June 21st. And the FBI interviewed Kushner again on June 23rd. White House advisors tell the New York Times Kushner met with Trump to discuss the issue around the time he updated his federal disclosure form to include Veselnitskaya, her name on a list of foreign contacts. It's unclear what Kushner reportedly told his father-in-law. Given that the president said on Wednesday he found out about the meeting only, quote, 2 or 3 days ago. The president may have just found out about the meeting, but a new report claims the president's outside legal team was informed about the emails documenting the meeting 3 weeks ago. Quote, sources told Yahoo News that Mark Kasowitz, the president's chief lawyer in the Russia investigation, and Alan Garten, executive vice president and chief legal officer of the Trump Organization, were both informed about the emails in the 3rd week of June after they were discovered by lawyers for Kushner. Kasowitz and Garten have not responded to Yahoo's request for comment. So, John Meacham, a lot to digest there, long timeline. Bottom line, though, Jared Kushner time and time again seems to have forgotten meetings he may have had, people he may have met linked to Russia, and had to retroactively go back and put them on these forms.
Yeah, I mean, the assistant, I don't know the assistant's name, but maybe the Rosemary Woods of the new century. You know, whenever you end up having to say that it was a clerical person who made a mistake, whether it's erasing part of a Watergate tape or doing this, you know, you're in a treacherous place. One of the great questions, I think, going forward is clearly Bob Mueller has plenty to do, so that's good. He's not going to be bored as he investigates. But to what extent will a Trump base that voted for this man largely because of their discomfort with anxiety about globalization, to what extent are they going to react if in fact it turns out that we had a globalized election, that Russia was involved, which we now pretty much know, but if there was collusion, are we in a post-fact world so far past that sign, that a timeline like that, like you just laid out, actual evidence, the emails that Donald Jr. put out, these are now pieces of data. This isn't the media confecting something. This is what happened. What will the 85% of Republicans who support President Trump say? What will it take for them to say, you know what, I think that if there's this much smoke, I think there was actually fire?
Rick, his base, though, as polls have showed time and again, have hung in with him. And not just his base, but Republicans at large are with him. This
is what it is. So we're in a football stadium, and the fans are divided, and there's a call, and it says replay, right? From the flag on the play, replay. And they call the play. Half the fans will say that was the wrong call, and half will say that was the right call, based on what they both watched. And that's what it is. I mean, it's almost as if the truth doesn't matter. It is, does it help my team, or does it not help my team?
Even if the right call was clear on the Jumbotron,
even if it was still booed. Right, like, it was clearly out of bounds, but no, bad call.
It gets, tragically, to the one single most outstanding success of the Trump presidency. And that's his successful and sustained assault on the news media. Yeah. I mean, that has taken hold. And there are huge numbers of Americans, a huge percentage of Americans choose not to believe these stories, choose not to believe that Russia may have participated in our election, which is, in effect, an act of war, cyber war, against the United States on behalf of Donald Trump, knowingly or unknowingly on Trump's part. But the American people, a huge number of American people, do not believe the news media.
And I was going to take it one step further, excuse me, Heidi, that they're not even engaged in this story. You know, we sit here, we're all caught up with very good reason. And I still think there was a huge leap of faith in voting for him, because their attitude is, if he can bring my job back to the coal mine, or if he can help me with health care, I'm going to do it. And frankly, I think for about 90% of that 85%, until they realize that because of this, that's not going to happen, that's when they lose him. Not because of this, but the end result where he becomes impotent. And guess what? You know what? I still don't believe the Russia stuff, but he's not getting any of this stuff done. I think that's when he starts to lose him.
I just think when it comes to the news media, yes, you're right. Overall, when you put us together as the aggregate, the polls show that there's a very low level of trust. But when you start to drill down on that, what we know about American consumption of news is that it is very bifurcated, but people trust their source of news. So people who watch MSNBC or CNN, they have much higher numbers for people who, you know, in terms of trust of the news media that you watch. So I think as this starts to come out, as this information starts to come out, even on outlets like Fox, there are people who are speaking out, like Charles Krauthammer, who are saying, look, we have been lied to for 6 months. I think that starts to resonate. And as well, when the information is coming out, Rick, like on the health care bill that is going to affect so many Americans in these rural states.
Trump's voters know he lies. That's not a mystery to them. But he's our liar, right? You know, he's going to, you know, well, they lie. How do you like it? You know, but the other thing is, what Trump leaves on the table is just what you said, Heidi, is even though he can communicate directly with the voters, which is a new thing through Twitter and social media, which is extraordinary in itself, but more people watch MSNBC today. More people are reading the New York Times, Washington Post, and Fox, and all the rest of it. They're getting their news through the same.
It's still such a small slice. You say a lot of people. There are 300 million people in this country, and if you look at the numbers, although this is a wildly successful show that this show does, and Fox, it's still.
But the failure to communicate through all those vehicles and leaving those voters on the table. You know, you're going to be stuck with the basis of support that's not large enough.
If you talk to a Trump supporter, an ardent Trump supporter, and there remain a lot of them, they broadly believe that the Russia story is the witch hunt that Donald Trump claims it is. So
I think it's like the Democrats thought it was Benghazi.
Well, when you can present facts, as we've been doing, and you can give a detail of the story, and it's not interesting because they've already dismissed it at large, that it's not worth pursuing.
And that's why I think actually the Democrats are worried that they can't control everyone in their caucus. They can't control people who are rushing gleefully to file articles of impeachment. Other Democrats that I talk to in the leadership say, look, we need to let this process play out. The truth will come out. And when you talk to even Republicans who are very skeptical of what's going on right now off the record, they say they just want to wait for Bob Mueller, because we in this country, remember, Russia started doing this digging before Trump was anywhere on the scene. The ultimate goal is to pit us against each other, American against American, to undermine faith in our system. And that's what's going to happen unless both sides wait for the full information to come out before rushing to conclusions.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Putin has already won a huge victory. He's created chaos within the American political system. But the larger issue, there's an intersection here. The diminishment of belief in the news media and the president's behavior, his, you know, inability to stick to the truth or tell the truth. But if you go out, like John Meacham, he's out. When he gets driven from place to place where ordinary people live and work down in Tennessee,
Don't forget the backup car.
I think he would find the same thing that all of us find when you lead your normal life off this set. People are concerned about, am I going to lose my health care? What's health care going to cost? And while everybody says in the newspapers and on the business pages the economy is really soaring, people don't believe that. They don't grasp the reality of a strong economy. And John, I assume that you might find the same thing when you do get out of the back of the car.
You know, it's funny, when I asked for my 7-iron and we exchange a few words, you're absolutely right. It's the reason, again, the reason Trump was elected was distrust in government as it exists, and anxiety about a political class that had had either a Bush or a Clinton on virtually every ticket since 1980, and a household income that is stagnant or moving just a tiny, tiny bit. That's why he's there. Now, his popularity, what we all talk about, may be driven by the other political stuff, But that's the fundamental covenant. And if he doesn't deliver, I do think that ultimately his political support begins to erode somewhat. Now, the laws of political gravity have not been entirely repealed, but the elections politics is like the Pepsi challenge, right? It's one or the other. You can't beat something with nothing. So the shape and face of the opposition, both inside the Republican Party, insofar as any develops, and on the Democratic side, is going to be vital. I just think that if we, the final point here is the politics of this are incredibly important. Impeachment, ultimately, if that were ever on the table, is a political process. But there is the rule of law. And the rule of law, which is a fundamental premise of the country, should not be subject to popular passion. And so these investigations are going to have their own momentum.
And we'll talk about health care, Mike, coming up next, hanging by a thread right now for Republicans. Also ahead, we'll read from that Charles Krauthammer piece Heidi mentioned. It's titled, "Bungled Collusion is Still Collusion." Also ahead, just hours after Republicans unveiled their new health care bill, 2 Republican senators announced their opposition, and several others are still undecided. President Trump saying this morning that, quote, "Republican senators must come through as they have promised." We'll get into that. And we'll speak live with Democratic Whip Dick Durbin. You're watching Morning Joe. We'll be right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.